everyone, this is Mrs. Kringle, and today we're going to talk about some awesome databases available from the South Dakota State Library and from public libraries that are available for you to use to find primary sources. Primary sources are first-hand accounts of events that happened at that time, so they're created at the time that the event happened. Secondary sources are created after the event, long after the event has occurred, usually by someone who was not involved in the event. So I'm going to start off by showing you a couple or short little video here that's going to describe the difference between primary and secondary sources. And then we're going to go right into looking at some of those databases that are available from the South Dakota State Library and from other library sources around the country that are available to you off of the TF Riggs Library page. So we're going to start with this little video first.
Primary means first, or first-hand. So think of primary sources as materials that are first-hand. They're connected to an historical event because they were created during the time of the event, or because they involve someone who participated firsthand. For example, if you're researching the civil rights movement in Minnesota, you might find primary sources related to Matthew Little, a Minneapolis civil rights activist who went to the March on Washington in 1963. Little listened to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. deliver his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Little wrote notes and letters about that day, and someone took photos of Little at the march. Notes, letters, photos. These are all primary sources because they document Little's first-hand experiences with the civil rights movement. In your research, you might also find this oral history interview with civil rights activist Nellie Stone Johnson, which is also a primary source.
And these organizations all got together and formed a coalition.
Even though the interview was recorded after the civil rights movement, it's still a primary source because Johnson was involved firsthand in the movement. Other examples of primary sources include newspaper articles, autobiographies, maps, government records, art, and films. As long as the item is from the time you're researching or documents someone's first-hand experience, it's a primary source. Something else to remember, it doesn't matter if you're looking at the original primary source or a copy of the primary source. They are both primary sources. Secondary, of course, means after first. So secondary sources are materials created after a historical event. Let's say you're still researching the civil rights movement, and you're looking for information about Lena Olive Smith, Minnesota's first female African-American lawyer. This article about Smith was written by a law professor in 2001, well after the civil rights movement, so it's a secondary source. Here's a web page about Smith. It was created in 2014, so it's also a secondary source. Secondary sources include books, biographies, articles, dissertations, websites, and documentary films, as long as they were written about a person or historical event at a later time. Many secondary sources get their information from primary sources. Just look at the footnotes or bibliography at the end of the secondary source to see what primary sources were used. Let's test your knowledge. Here's a photocopy of the Minneapolis Spokesman newspaper from April 1968, soon after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Is this a primary or secondary source? It's a primary source because the newspaper is from the time of the assassination. Even though it's a photocopy and not the original paper itself, it's still a primary source. Here's a book about the civil rights movement, written by a history professor and published in 1990. Is it a primary or secondary source? It's a secondary source because it was written after the civil rights movement by someone who was not a first-hand participant. This is a book of letters written by Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball. It was published in 2007. Is it a primary or secondary source? It's a primary source. Even though it was published in 2007, it contains copies of letters written by Robinson, a first-hand participant in the civil rights movement. Now that you know what primary and secondary sources are, have fun researching. And remember, if you need help, ask a librarian. You can call, email, or ask questions in person. Visit www.mnhs.org/library for more information.
I like this video because it gives a nice, clear definition of primary and secondary sources, along with a lot of examples. The other reason I really like this video is it shows the Minnesota Historical Society. And while we are not in Minnesota, we are in Pierre, South Dakota, and we are home to the South Dakota State Archives, which is an organization that collects, curates, and makes available to the public all sorts of items, primary source materials related to South Dakota history. And the archives are located at the Cultural Heritage Center. They're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and they are staffed with amazing people who have great information about different topics in South Dakota history. So if you're thinking about doing a project on South Dakota history, I highly encourage you to take a look at the South Dakota State Archives because we are so lucky and fortunate to have that resource in our community. But today I want to show you how to get to some databases that you can use that have primary source material right at your fingertips on your computer. So we're going to go to the TF Riggs library page, and to get there we're going to go to schools. We put our mouse over the word schools. You'll see the 5 schools in our district. We put our mouse over the word TF Riggs High School. You'll see that pop-up menu that has TF Riggs Library on it. Once you get to the library page, we're going to come here to this tab right here that says Riggs Research Resources. The primary source document databases are going to be over here on the right-hand side listed under South Dakota State Library databases. These databases are provided to you. I need to take a few minutes to tell you about these. They're provided to you by the South Dakota State Library. They pay for the citizens of South Dakota to use them, and they pay a lot of money, and so I highly encourage you to use them. And the reason why we want to use databases as opposed to going to Google is the fact that the information you find on a database is vetted, means it's already been reviewed and has been found to be reliable. It's cited, meaning that it gives credit to where the information comes from, and it's authoritative. I don't have to second guess like I would if I was just looking at a website whether or not the information is true. I know that because it's in a database, it's already gone through a rigorous editorial review process. So I know that the information is good. So I highly encourage you to use it. One of the most awesome features about South Dakota State Library databases is that they operate on geolocating. Because the South Dakota State Library is paying for the citizens of South Dakota to use it, they need to know that you're a citizen. And one of the ways they do that is through geolocating on your computer. And so if you're in the boundaries of the state of South Dakota, you will not need a barcode or password to use these databases. If you're going to travel, let's say you have a family member that lives outside the state and you're going to go visit them, and you want to use the databases, come see me before you leave and I'll give you the barcode and password for TF Riggs High School so that you can continue to use the databases outside of the state. So this last year, I used to have my databases listed in alphabetical order. And I went to a training this summer and learned about so many more awesome databases that my list was getting too long. And so I decided to organize it. And the way I've organized it is divided up the databases based on what they're good for. So the first set of databases that you'll find are these general search databases. These are databases that are a great place to start your searching on any sort of topic. But the material that you're going to find in these databases primarily is secondary or stuff that was created after the event. It's still a great place to start, and you can see there's a lot of those databases. The next set of databases that we have listed there is the ebook and reference book databases. I love these databases, especially Gale Virtual Reference Library, because it's like these databases in this section are like having the reference shelf of dictionaries and encyclopedias all on your computer and at your fingertips. These are wonderful databases, but again, these are going to be secondary sources. And if you have particularly a history project and you want some of those primary sources, we need to come down to this section right here, which is called primary sources. And we just watched a video that explained what those were, but everything that's contained in these databases right here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 databases. These are all primary source materials, meaning that they were created, that the information that's in the databases were created at the time of the event. The first one I want to take a look at today is this one right here. It's called 19th Century U.S. Newspapers. This is a Gale company product. And we've looked at Gale before when we've looked at Gale Virtual Reference Library, which again is that ebook database. But in this particular database, all that you're going to find in it are 19th century US newspapers, which is perfect if you're going to do a project about something that happened in the United States in the 1800s. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can search this database. One, you can start over here and hit browse, and that'll take you to a listing of publications that they have in their database. So for example, if I hit show more databases, I see here the Bismarck Tribune from Dakota Territory. If I click there, I'm taken to a coverage page that shows me all the issues that they have available for me to browse. So I'm going to take a look at this one here from December 26, 1899. And here is the actual Bismarck Daily Tribune from that day. And you can see that they have several different articles over here. You can see right here, 5 killed and many injured. If you want to get the full text of that article, you can click there. If you want to see about took mules to Transvaal, you can click there. So this is a great way if you're particularly browsing for a topic, you're not really sure what you want to do, but you want to see what they were talking about in Bismarck in December of 1899. This would be a great way to take a look at that. I do find, though, that if I have a specific topic, I like to come up here to where there's a search bar. It looks almost like a Google search bar. We're going to type in our search term. Let's say I was interested in doing a paper on the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So I'm going to type in John Wilkes Booth, who was Abraham's Lincoln's assassin. I look here and I want you to notice that the database is trying to be helpful. It says, I see that you're searching John Wilkes Booth. Do you mean this? So it's giving me different options to search. I'm going to try this one because this looks like a subject heading. Whenever they put someone's last name, comma, then their first name, usually is a subject heading. So I'm going to click on that and see what comes up. And now it's gone through all the newspapers that it has in its database and it's come back with 995 results. If I look, however, at these results, I'm seeing local matters, theatrical. Well, I know that John Wilkes Booth was an actor, multiple classified advertisements. I don't really feel like I'm getting a good result. So I'm going to come over here where it says filter your results. And I have an option right here to filter by person about. So I'm going to click on that. And here this offers me the option of John Wilkes Booth, 82 results. Edwin Booth was his brother. So if I want to look him up as well, I could select both of them. I'm just going to do John Wilkes Booth right now and see if I get some more targeted results. So I'm going to hit apply and it's going to filter my results and redo my search. And I now come back with 82 results. And let's see if I get anything that's a little bit more targeted. I see one here that's called The President's Murderer. Came from a publication called the Boston Daily Advertiser from Boston, Massachusetts. The issue was on April 17th, 1865. Well, I know that this is a primary source because Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on April 15th, 1865. So this is just 2 days after the assassination attempt or assassination. So I click on that, and what it does is it takes me to a scanned newspaper article. And I should be able to find the article on there called The President's Murderer. Now, I don't know about you, but this is impossible for me to read. So if I come over here, I have the option of zooming in if I want to, and then I can navigate around the page if I want to. Okay, that's going to fit it to the height, fit it to the width. That makes it a little bit easier to read. I can do it that way. What I like, though, is I also have the option over here on the left-hand side to click on plain text. And what that does is it puts the text of the article that I'm looking for right here in a font size that's easier for me to read. And so what it says is the president's murderer. There seems now but little reason to doubt that the wretch whoso's name will be branded with everlasting infamy as the murderer of Abraham Lincoln was John Wilkes Booth, the actor. Don't you just love the language used in these old newspapers? I think it's great. Goes on to talk about how John Wilkes Booth was the son of Junius Brutus, Booth, who was an actor, a very renowned actor from London, who came over to the United States with his family. All 4 of his sons took up acting. This particular paper seems to think that Edwin Booth was the best actor. It says here that John Wilkes Booth has played many engagements in this city, but was given to rant and mouthing and showed in his acting the coarseness of his nature. And it goes on to say he was about 25 years of age and unmarried, strongly built and muscular. It said, we have been informed that his character was far from good, and that although some of the members of his profession may at first have been friendly towards him on account of his family connections, yet his tastes led him to seek the lowest company, and that this and his avowed disloyalty has of late caused him to be shunned by his brother's actors. And it goes on to talk about how Edwin Booth actually kicked him out of his house for his treasonous language, did not share the same sentiments that he did. Talks too about how he came to Washington and started practicing knife throwing. It's very, very descriptive and not something that we would normally see in a textbook or in a secondary biography about John Wilkes Booth. This is very descriptive and designed to sensationalize the event, which obviously it was a very sensational event, but designed to inflame these emotions even further. And it really does give kind of an interesting look at John Wilkes Booth that you may not normally have. So that's kind of the insight that you get from primary source materials that I think is really neat. This is a database. So we have our function keys up here in the upper right-hand corner. Because it's a database, not only do we know it's reliable, but it's going to be cited. If I hit the cite button, there's my MLA citation, and we can just select it and copy and paste it into our document. I always encourage you, though, to visit with your teacher to make sure that this citation is correct, because sometimes we do find errors in these citations. Well, we do use MLA citation here, so you can ignore the other citation styles. You can send this article to yourself as an email. You can download it to your Google Drive or to your hard drive on your computer, and you can print it. You can also get a link so that you can go directly back to this article in the future. I just love this database, especially if you're going to be doing anything from the 1800s. There is another South Dakota State Library database on this list of primary sources that has access to newspapers and magazines, and that's called Reader's Guide Retrospective, 1890 to 1982. So the magazines and newspapers in this particular database cover the time period of 1890 to 1982. Not everything in this database is full text. That means some of what you're going to find is going to be abstracts only, but that's okay, because if you find one you like that does not have full text, come see me and we'll try to get that article for you. But this you would just search. This is an EBSCO company database. It's very similar to ones we've looked at before, like Master File Complete. So you search it just like you would Google. We put in our search terms. This is going to be too far after Abraham Lincoln's assassination, so it's not a database I would use for that sort of topic. But if I was looking for like civil rights, or if I was looking for Watergate or the American Indian movement, those all happened in the 60s and the 70s. This is a perfect database to use to find that primary source material. So let's do a search on Watergate. And again, the database, just like Gail's database, is trying to be helpful. I see you're searching this. Are you really interested in Watergate scandal? Are you interested in Watergate affair? This is a great way to build your keywords for your searching. And I always tell my students to take a look at those extra keywords that they're giving you as some suggestion ideas. I'm just going to stick with Watergate for this search because I don't know what's in here yet. So I'm going to start broader. If I need to narrow it down, I can always add another keyword. Well, I get 1,275 results, but it's very important to note that these are not all full text. If I just want to look at full text, ones where I can read the article right now, I need to come over here to the left-hand side and put a check mark next to link to full text. It's going to do my search again, and it's going to retrieve only those that are full text. And so I eliminated about 900 articles. So now I'm down to 371, but that's plenty of primary source material there on Watergate. And I know they're from that time period and that they're primary sources because they're from 1974 and 1973. So let's take a look at this one. It's called Scrambling to Break Clear of Watergate. Came from Time magazine on August 27, 1973. If I click on that, here is my abstract or indexed citation. And then if I scroll down, here's my actual article. So I can read through that and use that. If I need to print this, okay, my function keys are over here on the right-hand side. I can print that, I can email it, I can save it, I can cite it. Cite will bring up a list of all these different types of citation styles, which you can see over here in blue. We're going to scroll down till we find MLA, and that is our citation there for this particular article. Again, you can copy and paste that into your works cited. So I love, like I said, Reader's Guide retrospective, and I love that 19th century newspapers to get some of that primary source material. Another database that I want to show you and talk about, because I think it's just like the coolest thing ever, is called this Digital Public Library of America. This is not a South Dakota State Library database. This is just a database that's on the internet and available to the public. It contains over 46 million images, texts, and videos and sounds from libraries across the United States. I think this is just so cool. So let's do a search on John Wilkes Booth. When I do that, I retrieve 381 results. And if I look, 141 of them are images. 103 of them are text. And so I can actually go to any of these. These are all links. If I just want to look at the images, I can click on images and it redoes my search for me. So I'm going to take a look at this picture here, because remember they talked about in that video we watched, pictures are primary source material. Here is the picture. It tells me who the photographer was, where it was taken, and who is donating this for people to see on the archive, and that's the Minnesota Historical Society. But here's the really cool thing about the Digital Public Library of America. Over here in each image, you'll see cite this item. They actually have citations for the images and the objects on their database. So it's very cool and available. And I encourage you to take a look. Just think about all the different topics and time periods in history that you can use to find information. Another one that's new to me this year is called the Digital Public Library, or Digital Library of South Dakota. And this is a collection of materials available from Board of Regents universities that have gotten together and decided to collaborate on a project to make available collections from their libraries to general searching by the public. So if you're doing a South Dakota topic, this would be a great place to check out, see what some of the college libraries might have in their collections on that topic. Another one here is the state archives. And I talked about that a little bit at the beginning of this presentation, but our state archives are located at the Cultural Heritage Center, and they have an amazing website you can use. Like if you want to know about flooding in South Dakota, let's say you want to do the Pierre flood of 2011, you can come in here and find out great information about that. You can find out about the Rapid City flood in 1972, great stuff. But what we're so fortunate is we can actually walk up to the Cultural Heritage Center, go into the archives, and have people actually show us these physical items in our hands and that be able to touch them. It's so neat. Highly encourage that. Now, I just want to mention that this is not the only place to find primary source materials. There are other databases listed here that have primary source materials. We just need to scroll down. Okay, so it says see also specialized databases for history. So if I scroll down, here are my specialized research databases. These four right here relate only to agriculture and business. These three right here relate only to education. These three relate only to genealogy. These ones down here, these three are geography databases. These many, I think there's like 10 or 12, are related to health and medicine. And these right here, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, are 8 other resources you can use to find primary sources on history, particularly U.S. history. So let's take a look just briefly at this one that says sources in U.S. history, the American Revolution. If I click on that, this is a database from Gale that is all about the American Revolution and primary sources related to that. So if I do a search on George Washington and hit enter, I come up with 181 monographs. Now, I'm thinking that these are pretty targeted. I'm seeing some images right here. I see letters right here. So I'm thinking it's pretty targeted. If I felt like I wasn't getting what I wanted, I could come over here and filter again, just like I did in 19th century newspapers database. But I think this is pretty good. Because this is Gale, like let's look at this letters from George Washington. We know it's cited again because once I get into an item, I'll see that cite button and I can use that to cite it. This is letters from General Washington to several of his friends. So really interesting. So you can take a look at those. So that's a primary source material, those letters they were talking about. There are several collections in here that you can take a look at, that you have access to. So make sure that you take a look at those. You have access to the U.S. history of slavery in America, U.S. history of the American Revolution, Civil War, overland journeys. These are all primary source material databases related to those topics. And you can see that there are other ones on here. I've got NASA. This is a website that is actually from NASA that's got the history and development of the NASA. Indigenous people, if you're looking for information about the indigenous peoples of North America, this database right here has extensive information. This Black Freedom Struggle is developed by PerQuest company, and it focuses on primary source material related to African American history. So just quite amazing resources. There's so many primary source materials for history. If you have any questions, please be sure to seek me out in the library. I look forward to seeing you. Have a great day.